in the constituency that I represent, and I think it's good for us to talk about so that we can really rely on this committee to address some of that and we get to solutions rather than talking past each other and fighting what are very difficult regulatory frameworks to put in place.
So to focus more clearly on patient service and patient volume, Aaron's right. When I took my first look at the rules, I was concerned. While I don't work in the retail pharmacy space, I have many colleagues that do, and the issue of patient traffic and volume and what's actually serviceable and then what becomes the potential to be a public nuisance, which is a dispensary that is at 7 o'clock every morning fraught with 500 patients standing and waiting to be serviced, I think is very unattractive to the neighborhood in which that resides. So particularly for those that are business-minded around the table, I'd really like to get your input on, from a business operational plan. I can comment from a pharmacy traffic perspective, but I really like to understand, while 600 might be the floor, and I agree with you that there will be a business case to be made of whether I need to actually stay in business and what that patient number might mean. What would you like these to look like? I mean, what type of patient traffic, patient flow, from a business perspective, becomes reasonable over the course of an 8, 10, 12-hour day?
Yeah, so I actually respectfully would argue the correct question isn't how many patients, but it's what is the revenue that those patients are going to generate. And we haven't talked about the price point for the product. So really what matters isn't the number of patients, but it's the price point. And the challenge you're going to have, let's say you have 300, 400 patients coming through the door, in order to meet your revenue needs to get your return on the equity, you're going to have to push the price of the product up. My concern is you push the price of the product up, then these patients are going to have alternative black market sources of the product at a lower cost. So the cost part of it matters a great deal because you're trying to incentivize the patients to use the legal regulatory framework. And if you set the cost barriers too high, that's not going to happen.
And if I understand, well, I think I understand this right, that will be determined by the marketplace. If there's no rule around outside of the fee structure, there's no rule determining that. And we've had general conversation about how is that price point going to be set. And I can, we've seen in other states how that might be done, but it will be market driven.
Yeah, it's going to be set based on the return on equity that's going to be required by these businesses. And if you set that too high, you're going to have alternative suppliers that aren't going to be in the regulatory framework.
The only thing that's going to complicate that from the individual side that I know as college students is that they care a lot about what their product is. They will go to alternatives. They know where the cheap marijuana sources are in the state, but they are always, they're amazingly informed abusers or users, and they really want to know what's in their product. And I think the labeling is amazing and as a selling point, because, and this is Marcy's point too, people want to go to a treatment that they know what they're going to get and that it might help them. Right now they think it might help them, but by your wonderful labeling, I think that aspect of this is going to convince people, I know what's in here. It's like when they go to Whole Foods and they pick up an herbal, they read the label. It's become de rigueur now for the people who are out there as consumers. I want to know what's in my product, my cereal, my Red Bull, my whatever it might be, and I think the labeling might overcome some of their reluctance. And they feel that this is a real drug because it has an actual label on it. I'm hoping that means they'll pay more for it.
It's interesting on the alcohol side, we have in the state minimum markups that have to be added, and it sort of sets a level for the price, whereas in the prescriptions and the medical marijuana, there are no minimum markups. So it does set the potential stage for highly competitive situations between dispensaries.
Would. In the pharmacy space, of course, we introduce the variable which we will not have here, which is the insurance market often sets that for us. This will not be that. This will be purely market driven and remains to be seen. So this leads me to one of the first points I wanted this committee to discuss while we're on the return on investment conversation. There is a rule, and the statute actually insists that we do bring assistance programs together with indigent and veteran populations. It doesn't really say what that should look like. It doesn't really say what degree. I would like to have your input on what your thoughts would be around that. If a dispensary in your mind was to be satisfying the rule or the statute that's written, how would you like to see that behavior to be in the area specifically around patient assistance and veteran supports?
May I ask, do other states already have veterans assistance programs that we can learn from?
There are some, yes. How their enforcement for a dispensary that applies and says that they will have a program though is not as clear. So there's the state-driven element, and then there's the industry-driven element. And I think what Kurt's asking about is the industry-driven element. So will the dispensaries themselves, if they choose, to submit an application that includes an element of a compassionate care element to benefit the veterans or indigent? What should that look like at a dispensary?
Is it one patient a year? Is it 100? Is it a dollar value? It's when we're talking about market dynamics, this is something in the pharmacy space that is somewhat a foreign concept to us. There is no mandate in the retail pharmacy space to take care of patients who cannot take care of their bills. That there is none. In the health system space, in particularly the nonprofit arena, there's some other mandate that we have to do that. My fear here when I read that rule was that there will be some dispensaries who are known for taking care of indigent care patients at a much lower return than, and they will be flooded with this work. And there'll be other dispensaries who will just take a cursory view to say, I took care of my 5 patients this year, and therefore I have satisfied the rule. I think my opinion is, and I don't know what the committee's opinion will be, is that might need a little bit more shaping so that we are assuring that each dispensary is owning some relatively reasonable share of that care and doesn't just all land based on whatever case, demographics, economic geography, whatever that might be, to a subset of dispensaries who then struggle. Particularly in these early days when we're wondering what is the right number of dispensaries. So that's kind of where my head was, and I'm just using my brain power around that.
And I think part of that question too is, should that cost strictly be borne by the dispensaries, or should that somehow flow back to the processors and the cultivators as well?
I hate to point out the obvious fact here, but if these individuals and these entities who are investing so heavily in building this infrastructure, i.e. the industry, is doing well, right, then they're more capable of choosing to subsidize. And then I would reverse the problem to say that it wouldn't be that they're bearing the weight of this, is that they're succeeding to everyone's benefit and being capable of bearing that weight and choosing to. That could be a wonderful marketing tool. That you could see advantages that would be borne by being the dispensary or, quite frankly, the vertical. And I think this is where vertical integration really has contributed to the opportunities to provide the kind of patient feedback loop and integration of systems that really start leading to more directed medicine for specific conditions, i.e. PTSD in particular. That if you have a successful system that is predicated on choosing regulation that's going to encourage a marketplace, that then you have the ability to actually meet these kind of statutory directives. And that is what we see in other states, and quite frankly, once we start to realize that the sky doesn't fall, that these restrictions can unnaturally depress markets to everyone's detriment, to the state, and quite frankly to the back market that I know all of us are concerned about, it really starts to take away some of what I think are regulatory concerns about depressing the market rather than creating opportunities that will serve patient populations like veterans and the
I expect we'll probably have some comment, particularly from our veteran community around this. And there might be a way, much we discussed earlier, around the prevalence data in the state. How big of a problem is this? I'm not really sure I know. As a representative of one health system, I know for our system, we know clearly what that issue is for us as an organization. Does that extrapolate everywhere? I'm not sure. But at some point, there'll be some mass of patients where we need to provide some way for care, and they will not be able to afford whatever price point the market drives us to. And then it will fall in the dispensaries to somehow get them care. I just don't know what that looks like right now.
So there's no mechanism to have the state own a dispensary to be the person to point?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Not that I thought about. Any opinion on that? I mean, has there been discussion about that as this has come along?
There's not been any discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't do that either. Intriguing idea.
So the stigma of the state.
Yeah. Well, and there might be some, based on the federal status of this drug, there might be some regulation blocks right there that says, sorry, this is, you can't. I just don't know. And it's not becoming a risk.
I had a question. It's maybe a little too granular, but I just wanted a clarification. If you're looking at 02 5C, where it says that the business plan has to demonstrate adequate liquid assets to cover all expenses and costs for the first year, is that in addition to the requirement that they have 250 in liquid assets beginning? So is it 500,000 liquid, I mean, is it 250 plus, or is it together? That wasn't clear to me.
It would be an aggregate.
I'm sorry?
It would be an aggregate. So they have to have a minimum of 250 to start, and then they have to also illustrate that they have enough to sustain themselves for the first 3 years of operation. But it would be, it can be an aggregate. It can include that $250,000 liquid assets initially.
So it's 250 plus the first year?
The $250,000 can be part of that.
Okay.
We discussed that a bit at length when, given the number of dispensaries in the early phase, we have to do what we can to be sure they all sustain.
Yeah, that was.
And somebody making through their startup phase and then close. And there's a process to bring more dispensaries behind that. And we talked about that. And what's the real threshold from a cash perspective? I'm not sure. It will be a business case to make a decision. But I would agree that assessing an entity to fiscally survive, particularly a new program in the state, is critical for sustaining the program itself. Other comments on the application phase? That kind of takes us through.
I see there's things about employees and there's hours of operation. Is there anything, you were talking about making that margin, these places stay in business, making that margin up. Is there anything that says this is, when these dispensaries open, this is the only product they can sell? This is it. This is what they so they can't offer other products and services. You know, gas stations don't survive on gas. You know, pharmacies, CVS doesn't survive on just the pharmacy. They sell milk, toilet paper, whatever. And that's not what I'm saying. You know, are they able to offer this and modes of consumption and additional products?
Saying there would be snack shops associated.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a prohibition on selling food and drinks, so that won't be the case. There are a couple of different places in the rules that outline what they are allowed and what they're not allowed to sell. They can only sell medical marijuana products that are received from a cultivator or processor licensed by Commerce. It is expected that they will sell some pieces of equipment or paraphernalia related to the administration of medical marijuana. And then, of course, there are things that they would be, they would have to have approved through us if they're using it for advertising or something like that, their own marketing products.
There is some more granular language, a little bit deeper in the rules, so let's talk about that.
Is the hours of operations in this section?
That comes a little bit later,
Okay.
but it's there.
Can I ask one other question related to the application? One of the considerations is whether there's an ownership interest in another medical marijuana entity. Is that to be considered positively or negatively? I mean, it is a consideration, so you think it has to check some box one way or the other.
We're going to want to know whether they've had an ownership interest in another medical marijuana entity and how they've performed if they've been licensed in with another entity.
And just to be clear, one application is for one physical location, correct? It's not, I can't cover a little chain of these with one application. Right. Okay.
One would think that that's not a bad thing, obviously, having experience in this industry or being able to potentially take advantage of the cost savings and efficiencies related to a vertical that could be passed on to the consumer.
Okay, continue to move through. So we've kind of gone through the application phase, which covers routes 2. Now we're kind of moving into the ownership phase, rule 2-6-2-03. Ownership.
Sweet dreams are